They said we were silent, that we sat in the shadows while the men made history, that we stitched blankets and stirred pots and waited for someone else to lead. But that's not the story I was told. Not by my mother, not by my grandmother, and not by the wind that moves through the cottonwood trees when you listen just right. No, the truth is different. It's older, it's heavier. It's been carried on our backs and braided into our hair and whispered into the ears of our daughters for generations. The truth is, we were never behind. We were never after. We were always there, first to speak, first to build, first to bleed for something bigger than ourselves. Before I begin, I want to thank you for being here, for listening, for opening your heart to voices that were never meant to be erased. What you're about to hear isn't just a list of facts. It's a map, a memory, a way home for those of us who still carry the fire even when the world tries to drown it. Today, I want to share with you 5 roles Native American women held that history textbooks never taught you. Roles that shaped nations, protected futures, and kept cultures breathing when everything else was burning down. These are not legends. These are truths. Truths they buried in silence. But we remember. And now so will you. Let's begin. Truth 1. The diplomats. Women as peacekeepers and political voices. They say war was a man's world, that diplomacy was a game played by chiefs and councilmen and warriors who spoke with their fists before their mouths. But not where I come from. In my tribe, it was the women who settled storms, who walked into tents thick with tension and left with peace in their hands. My great-grandmother used to tell me when a war was about to start, the men would look to the women first. Because if the women weren't ready to send their sons to die, the fight was already lost. And if the women stood up and said no, the war had no legs to walk on. I remember a story passed down in our winter lodge. A woman older than the rivers walked for days to meet a rival nation. She brought no guards, no weapons, just a small pouch of tobacco and the memory of her dead brothers in her pocket. When she spoke, she didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She sang, soft, low, a song her mother taught her. And by the end of that meeting, the war was off the table. The fire burned a little longer that night. You see, we didn't need titles. We didn't wear badges or medals. But we had something else. Influence, presence, the kind that can walk into a room and quiet the noise. Women like mine negotiated hunting rights, resolved land disputes, brokered alliances through marriage trade, even silence. You might not find their names in your textbooks, but we still speak them. In prayers, in songs, in the way we carry ourselves when things get hard. And if you're wondering why history left us out, well, ask yourself who wrote it. It wasn't the women who sat in the councils and watched chiefs rise and fall. It wasn't the ones who whispered in the dark, not out of fear, but out of knowing. Real diplomacy doesn't always look like a signature on paper. Sometimes it's a shared meal, a quiet nod, a moment where one woman's wisdom stops 100 men from dying. That was our power. Quiet, steady, relentless. And now that you heard it, maybe you'll start seeing us. In every truce, in every treaty, in every moment when peace had a chance because a woman stood up and gave it one. Truth 2. The spiritual authorities and dream interpreters. They say power comes from what you can see. A crown, a council seat, a weapon in your hand. But where I come from, true power comes from what you feel. What moves beneath your ribs when the fire crackles just right. What speaks to you when no one else is listening. and that kind of power often lived in the women. My aunt, she wasn't loud. She didn't carry a staff or wear face paint, but people came to her from every direction because she saw things. She dreamed things. She'd sit with her back to the wind, eyes closed, and when she opened them, you'd feel like something old and deep just looked straight through you. She once stopped a boy from walking into a snake's den because she dreamed of red sand and warning songs the night before. And when she spoke her dream, the boy paused, just long enough to live. In our traditions, dreams aren't decoration, they're guidance, they're instruction. And the women, especially the elders, were the keepers of those messages. They knew which dreams came from the spirit world and which came from fear. They knew how to burn cedar the right way, how to listen between the silence, how to tell when a bird's flight meant something, when a shadow meant go back. You see, we didn't separate the sacred from the everyday. Gathering berries could be prayer, grinding corn could be ceremony, and the women who sang while they worked were weaving protection into the air. That's what Western minds never understood. They saw superstition. We saw systems. Layers of meaning held gently by the ones who gave birth, who buried, who remembered. And in moments of crisis, it was those women who the chiefs called for. When crops failed, when disease came, when a warrior disappeared without a trace. Not because they were magicians, but because they knew how to ask the right questions in the right way. And more importantly, they knew how to wait for the answer. In dreams, in signs, in stillness. Even today, I know women who dream in colors that don't exist, who carry bundles wrapped in cloth older than this country. They walk softly, but when they enter a room, the air bends around them. They don't speak often, but when they do, everyone listens. So next time someone tells you that power belongs to the ones with money or microphones or megaphones, remember us. Remember the women who didn't need noise to lead, who listened their way into truth, who dreamed for the whole village and woke up with answers. Truth 3. The architects and land planners. They like to think we were just gatherers, just caretakers of what others built. But I want you to picture something with me. A village. Not by accident, but by wisdom. Homes placed to catch the morning sun. Pathways shaped by the way water flows in spring. Storage pits deep enough to hold food through winter. Fire circles that sit just where stories sound best under the stars. None of that happened by chance. That was us, the women, the planners, the quiet architects. My grandmother told me once, "We don't just build with our hands, we build with our knowing." She meant the way women knew the land, not from maps, but from memory, from watching the birds, from feeling the dirt change beneath their feet, from hearing how the wind shifts when the season is ready to turn. Women decided where to plant, where to gather, where to settle, and when to move. They didn't shout orders. They didn't need to. They just knew. And the community followed. When we moved camps, it was the women who said when, who read the signs, the drying of roots, the behavior of animals, the shape of the moon, when to pull up stakes, when to stay put. You might think that's survival instinct, but I call it design. Environmental design rooted in relationship. And women led that, not with blueprints, but with ancestral memory running through their veins. Among the Hopi, the family house was passed down through the mother's line. That home, its walls, its doorways, its threshold was a center of gravity. A place for decisions, for births, for grief. And who decided where to place it? How to shape it? The women. Because we knew which stones to use, which way the wind would carry the heat, where the rain would hit hardest. Every choice had a purpose. Every placement was protection. And you want to know something wild? We're still doing it. In cities now. In concrete jungles that forgot what soil smells like. Native women today are reclaiming how we build, how we gather, how we share space. Urban gardens on rooftops. Healing lodges built with breath and prayer. Gathering circles tucked into asphalt corners. We remember how to shape space so it breathes with us, not against us. So no, we weren't just homemakers. We were land readers, movement shapers. We didn't just survive off the land. We cooperated with it, built into it. Protected the people by understanding the ground beneath their feet better than any colonizer with a compass ever could. And if that's not architecture, then maybe it's time we change the definition. Truth 4. The environmental guardians. I've watched rivers change, not just in their shape, but in their silence. The kind of silence that comes when something sacred is being choked. The elders say the land remembers, and the women, we were always the ones who remembered it with her. My mother used to say the earth doesn't need permission to speak, but she needs someone willing to listen. And women, native women, we've always been those listeners. Not because we're gentler, but because we've learned how to pay attention to things most people step over. We knew the season by the smell of the wind, the health of the soil by the weight of our footsteps. We knew when the salmon would come just by how the water moved beneath the reeds. These weren't guesses. These were observations gathered over generations, passed not through books, but through stories told while grinding roots, while nursing babies, while sitting beside the fire long after the men had gone to sleep. Women knew which plants healed and which ones harmed, which trees were sacred and which could be used for shelter. We taught our daughters how to harvest without hurting, how to thank the land every time we took something. And when settlers came and took more than they gave, it was the women who noticed first. The quiet absence of birds, the early melt in snow, the animals moving higher up the mountains where they didn't belong. Among my people, certain women were chosen to guard specific territories, not with weapons but with knowledge. They knew where the deer calved, where the berries ripened first, where the ancestors had buried medicine. They didn't need a badge to be respected. They had memory, and memory is power. You might think environmentalism is a modern word, but we were practicing it long before that word ever existed. Only we didn't call it a movement. We called it survival. We called it love. And now, the same women are rising again, fighting pipelines, planting seeds that haven't grown in 100 years, teaching children the songs of birds whose names have almost disappeared. It's not a trend, it's a return, a remembering. So next time you hear someone call us caretakers, don't take it as a small word. Take it as a sacred one. Because caretaking isn't passive, it's deliberate, it's protective, it's fierce. And when the land is in pain, we feel it in our bones first. Truth 5. The transgenerational educators. They try to teach us that knowledge comes from chalkboards, from degrees, from pages printed in black and white. But I was raised in a world where knowledge came from hands, from eyes, from the rhythm of a story told while someone combed your hair, where lessons came in circles, not straight lines. My first teacher didn't stand in front of a classroom. She stood in a garden humming while pulling weeds. She told me about the stars, not with diagrams, but with stories that lived in the spaces between silence. She taught me numbers through patterns and beadwork, taught me language through lullabies, taught me history through scars she never needed to explain. You see, Native women didn't just carry life. We carried memory. We carried language. We carried entire systems of belief coded into recipes, into songs, into the way we braided our children's hair before sunrise. We didn't need whiteboards because we had firelight. And around that fire knowledge passed from one generation to the next like breath. Even when they tried to take it from us through boarding schools, through punishment, through silence, we whispered it back. One word at a time. I've met women who rebuilt a language from a single phrase their grandmother whispered before she passed, who raised their children only in that tongue so that it wouldn't die. That's not education. That's resurrection. And still we keep teaching. In kitchens, on back porches, in community centers where grandmothers kneel beside toddlers and show them how to grind corn the way our ancestors did slow circular patient. We teach more than tasks. We teach presence. We teach responsibility. We teach belonging. Our stories weren't written in textbooks. They were etched into bone, into the land, into the rhythm of drums and the echo of canyon walls. They move when we speak. They awaken when we remember. So when someone asks me where our schools were, I say everywhere. Wherever a woman sang, wherever a child listened, wherever the past met the future in a moment of shared breath. That's where our education lived, and that's where it still does. So now you've heard them. The parts of us they tried to forget. The diplomats who shaped peace with their presence. The dreamers who listened deeper than the wind. The builders who shaped homes with memory. The protectors of the land who knew how to hear the trees breathe. And the teachers who never needed chalk or desks to pass on a universe. We were never silent. We were never background. We were never just anything. We were structure. We were voice. We were memory. And we still are. You may not see us in monuments. You may not read about us in the pages they call official. But if you listen, really listen, you'll hear us. In the stories the rivers still carry. In the footsteps of women walking the same paths our mothers did. In the language that refuses to die. In the breath between drum beats. Thank you for walking this path with me. For listening not with your ears, but with your heart. That's where our stories live now. Not in the past, but in you. So carry them gently. Speak them when the time is right. And when someone tells you we were never there, smile softly and begin again.